Hi, this is Edward Troxel. In the previous tutorials, we've learned how to go through and look at the images and check to see if it was a duplicate image. We learned how to put markers on the duplicate images. Then we converted that into regions, and now we want to actually remove the duplicate sections. So instead of actually creating the region, I want to actually delete the region area that would have been created for the region. So instead of making a region, we're just deleting that area. However, that leads to some other problems that we had to take care of in the code, so we'll take a look at that as well. So let's see what code changes needed to be made. If we're going back to the main section here, you will see that I have now modified this and I've added a timecode variable here. And I just called that minimum start, and I set it to the very beginning of the timeline. Now what I want to do is make sure that the event that I'm looking at starts after this minimum start. So I want to not only check to see if it is selected, but I want to make sure that the start is greater than the minimum start, and then I can check for regions, and it's going to return me a new minimum start. The reason for that is that as I delete sections, I'm actually creating more events, so it would jump from this event to the next event that I've just created, and then to the next event that I've just created, and I don't want to do that. I want to skip the new events that I've created and only process the ones that I haven't looked at yet. So looking at our check images region, one thing we've done is we've changed this. Instead of it saying void, now it says timecode, because we are going to return a timecode to the main routine. And then the big change is right here. We had these two lines to create the region, and instead of creating the region, we now want to actually remove that region. So I can actually get rid of these two lines, and we are now going to get a new event which is given back to us from remove region. We're passing the current event to it, the region start, and then the length that we are going to remove. And then in our else, we did the same thing. This was the second place where we created a region. So I can now delete that. And then my new event is going to be the remove region event and the region start and the region length. And you can see here I've changed the message in both cases to now say region removed. And then finally down here at the bottom, I had to add a return, and I'm returning the start of that event. But I've just noticed something in my code, and that is at the very beginning up here, I am setting this to be a new time code of 0, and I'm setting this to be greater than minimum start. My problem is if I have an event that's literally at the beginning of the timeline and it's selected, now I'm not going to process it. So technically this needs to be greater than or equal to, and then down here when I'm returning, I'm going to make sure that I return start plus timecode dot from frames, and let's add one frame to it. That way we'll make sure we're not passing at the start of that frame, and that way when we're looking for greater than, this one won't be. Then we have an entirely new routine here. This is our new remove region routine that we called up above. So this remove region, it's going to return a track event, and we're passing it the track event, the region start, and the region length. So if the region start is not equal to the event start, then it is not at the beginning of the event, then we need to split it at the beginning point. So we get our new time code, which is going to be our split point, which is our region start minus our event start. That's how far over in the event we need to go. So then the right event in this case will be event.split, and we're splitting at the split point. Then all I'm doing is setting event, which we pass to it, equal to the right event. Now, if the event length equals the region length, then we know we're going to remove everything from there on. So we just take the event.track. We want to get the track that this event is on and look at the events on that track, and then we're going to remove this event from it, and we'll just set event equal to null. If the lengths are not the same, then we're going to have to split again. And in this case, our split point is going to be our start point minus the event start, just like we did up above. But now we have to also add the length, because now we're looking at the end of the region. Once again, our right event is going to be our event.split, and this is the split point. And then we're going to go to the event.track.events.remove. Remember, event is the left part, and that's the part we're removing. And so we're going to remove that event. And then once again, I'm setting event equal to the right event. And then once all this is done, I'm returning that event back up above. So this will be the event we continue working on. There was one other change. Because we're changing the length of the event as the routine processes through now, this number is going to be changing. The event.length.frameCount changes. So now I created me a new variable called frames to process, and I got event.length.frameCount from there. And then in my for loop down here, I'm using frames to process, and then there were a couple of other places that we used it as well. And so down here, I am using frames to process -1, frames to process -1, frames to process -1. So in these three cases, I needed to change that to the new variable as well, because otherwise that number is going to be off. So let's see how it works. In this case, I actually have two events on the timeline selected, and this is going to get us into another potential change that we want to make. So I've got both of these selected, and let's run the script. Okay, so after running this, I can see a potential problem here, in that this entire second event was deleted, which would be fine if there was absolutely no change in them. But if we undo, we will see that there is actually changes. It's just not enough to trigger the flag. So let's look at the log that we've created. If we come down here and look at the bottom of this log, we will see that that area is below our point 4. but every one of those is above 0.1. So if we go back to our script and change our threshold down to 0.1, then that should take care of that issue. So let's come into our script. We'll change our threshold to 0.1, save it, and try again. As you can see, the results were definitely different this time, and all of these were kept, whereas the ones that didn't change were removed. And then, of course, I have this one little change here. And so all of those we were able to keep this time. So now we've gone through and we've actually removed all the regions and just deleted the sections that were there where the regions would have been. We also noticed that changing the threshold can definitely have a big difference on what gets removed and what doesn't, so you'll have to play around with the threshold to see how that works with your particular video. So now we've got all the duplicate frames found. We've actually removed the duplicate frames. All we have not done is get all of the pieces back together. So that'll be in the next video, so stay tuned. Please sign up at www.jettv.com and subscribe on YouTube to get further notifications on when new videos are presented.